Good afternoon, everyone. This meeting is to give consideration to the appointment of the proposed post of Section 151 officer in the Police and Crime Commissioner's office in Staffordshire. We have an agenda today, which I'm assuming everyone has seen. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies.
I've received apologies from Councillors Fitzpatrick and Councillor Lees.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is declaration of interests. Are there any? No. Item 3 on the agenda, consideration of proposed appointment to the post of Section 151 officer, brackets Chief Finance. Commissioner.
Thank you, Chairman and panel members. I'm absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to introduce you to Catherine Ross today. After a very extensive process, one where we had a number of really very high quality candidates with real experience across private and public sector. Catherine excelled actually during the process and in her interviews. The job of 151 officer with my team is a very important one. Essentially, it is for us to agree and consider requests, recommendations from the two service leads, amounted to £270 million. So getting that right is very important. But unlike other jobs, and I sort of don't have, I don't envy Catherine or anybody else who applied actually. This isn't a job where you could sort of read on Google what is a 151 officer for a police and crime commissioner, let alone a police, fire and crime commissioner, because it isn't an easy role to describe. Absolutely, it's about financial process, understanding, really having experience of budget setting, balancing MTFS reports off into the distance, but it's also about building relationships with the two services. That is not always straightforward, as I think David would attest to over the years that he's been doing that role. It's important that the individual is comfortable and capable of helping police and fire to deliver their savings ambitions, to help them where possible to deliver projects. We have some significant capital projects upcoming in the next few years, to see that they're value for money, but also that they are delivered on time wherever possible. So it's a role also where there's a reach out into wider partnership world to support others in pooling resources, and particularly supporting the commissioning team around their, wherever possible, securing grant monies and other funding streams that can come in to the benefit of Staffordshire. It's a wide-ranging role. I wouldn't expect anybody to hit the ground with experience in all those areas from day one, but they need to demonstrate the capacity to take on all of that, and particularly to form those strong relationships. And I think Catherine will be able to do that. Just for clarity, David Greensmith has been my 151 officer, but is also the 151 officer for the Fire and Rescue Service. And part of the decision to go to the more traditional model of having the 3 151s is that the fire and rescue demands are likely to increase. They have been increasing in recent years, and with legislation that we expect round the corner, which may well give fire and rescue services operational independence, not unlike the police have, then the demands on David will grow even further, and they have done in the last few months. David, thank you, because you've done a fantastic job for me, and I know you're going to continue to do it for a little while yet. But I think we'll agree there's more you can do with fire and rescue, and actually there's more that somebody in the position with us can do in terms of supporting the office and building up those wider relationships outside. So that's one key relationship for Catherine. And then the second is with John Bloomer and his team at the police service. Now, some of you will recall that the finances of both services were not in great shape not too many years ago. Quite frankly, I'd be surprised at the moment if there's a police and fire rescue service that's in better shape now. So we've got good financial control, good financial oversight and leadership. What I think we'll have the opportunity to do, and I'm hoping you'll support my recommendation, is that Catherine will add to that, and it will be to the benefit of everybody in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. Chairman, Catherine said that she's happy to say a few words so you know her a little better, and then I gather you might want to ask her some questions.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Welcome, Mrs. Ross. Colleagues will have a few questions, but we would like to invite you to just give us a quick overview of yourself and your experience. That would be really helpful if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, that's fine. So, hi, I'm Catherine. I was born in Chester, grew up in Chester, went to Lancaster University. I've got a degree in psychology. Following university, I took a year out and went travelling with my boyfriend Andy at the time, that's now my husband. We went round Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, Vietnam and Cambodia. On return, I started a job at KPMG in Liverpool in the audit department. And then shortly after that, I made the decision to move in with Andy, who's from the Midlands, into Staffordshire in Lichfield. And shortly after that, I got the job at Staffordshire County Council on their graduate trainee accounting scheme. So as part of that scheme, I joined actually in the same year as John Bloomer, Section 151 officer at the police. But as part of that scheme, we had various placements, and one of them was at the Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service working for David. So I had a year there, qualified as the Chartered Accountant with SIPFA, and quite quickly got promoted to a Senior Finance Business Partner. So in these business partner roles at the County Council, your role is to work really closely with the services and be that point of contact and support them in achieving their MTFS savings and building their balanced budget. So I was Senior Finance Business Partner for a few years and then got promoted again to a Strategic Finance Business Partner, which I've done for the last 4 years. And over the last year, I've been stepping up to be the Deputy Section 151 Officer at the County Council as well, and everything that brings. As part of the role in the Senior and Strategic Finance Business Partners, have been involved in some of their strategic capital projects. Some of those have included I-54, so I've been the key project accountant on that, which is the joint venture with Wolverhampton City Council, off Junction 2 of the M54. I've also been the main accountant on the Stafford Western Access Route scheme, which I'm sure many of you will know, in the centre of Stafford as well. And my role has primarily been supporting the Economy, Infrastructure and Skills Directorate, along with corporate services and finance. So the combined budget areas of all of those is just under 200 million. Just a little bit about me as a person as well. So I've got 2 small children. Jacob's just about to finish year 1, and my daughter Emily, who's 4, and is a very strong-willed little 4-year-old girl who's keeping me on my toes all the time. She'll start reception in September. I really enjoy running. I'm not very good at it, so don't ask me for a race, anybody, but I just really enjoy getting out, going for a run or going swimming, and travelling when I can, going up to the Lake District, and just spending some time with my friends and family, really. And then was really pleased to receive the offer of this role. I think it would be a really good new challenge for me. I'm keen to sort of support services in fire and police that are so important to the residents of Staffordshire. And I think I'd really look forward to sort of taking on those Section 151 responsibilities in a more formal, permanent role.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Colleagues will have a few questions for you, I know, in a moment, because we have taken the time to read through the papers, your CV and all the information that came to us. And it made a good read, and you've echoed that perhaps in your introduction. Could I just start by asking you a question? The Commissioner mentioned that you'll be considering requests from the police and the fire chiefs for funding formulating budgets. So in the context of having a strategic vision based on the poor performance of the management of the accounts prior to the Commissioner getting a grip, if I could say that at this point, tell me about risk, your experience of managing risk in scenarios like this, and what do you see as the most important element of risk management associated with programs and finance?
Okay. I'd say in all of the work we do, so on sort of the capital programme and just in terms of building the MTFS, we plan a lot around risk and the management of that. So there'll be various techniques that we would do around just simple things like scenario analysis. There'll be a lot of assumptions within the MTFS. An example would be inflation. We don't really know what will happen with that, so we'll do various scenarios for different situations, whether the rate will come down or how quickly it would come down, and these would follow through in terms of understanding what the impact of that is and any mitigations we can take. I think generally we take a very sort of reasonable worst case approach to a lot of our capital programmes as well, so we're not trying to be too optimistic. We tend to spend quite a lot of time researching similar programmes that have happened in neighbouring authorities perhaps, or working with similar, sort of along with similar situations so we can learn from their experience. I think, were you asking me, sorry, what I think is the most important element to manage? Yeah. So I think it's that sort of forward planning, really, to have thought through sort of all of the possible scenarios, to think them through in detail, to make sure everyone's on board and you've clearly communicated what that could mean. So you've got sort of contingency plans in place. In terms of, just going back to the capital programmes again, in terms of that, we follow sort of the Treasury Green Book process. And in terms of allocating sort of something really high at the start, so 40% optimism bias we would add into these projects, so we've clearly got sufficient money in there if something happens further down the line. And I think just a bit wider as well, it's in terms of in your planning that you're doing at the outset to when you've really considered the worst case scenario. When you're sort of managing the budgets and the figures, it's seeking out other opportunities to perhaps bring in additional income. So it gives you more wriggle room in terms of just managing the expenditure because you're focusing on bringing in additional income as well.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, that's sufficient for me at the moment. Thank you very much. May I open it up to colleagues who may have a question? Adrian?
Good afternoon, Catherine. Good to see you. My question is about managing change. I'd like to know, please, what's your experience of managing change? And could you give us an example of an episode on change that was very, very challenging and how you managed that, please?
Yeah, okay. That's a good one. So I've got some good experience of managing change. I've got sort of a couple of good examples. So, excuse me. So most recently, I've been the finance officer responsible for overseeing the bringing back in-house to the County Council of the household waste recycling centres. So that involved a TUPE of 60 staff. And that was a fairly difficult situation to begin with. There'd been a couple of years that hadn't gone well, sort of managing that service. So we're bringing them back in-house. So that was sort of involved in setting up the budgets around that. I was involved in having meetings with all of those staff to communicate what things would be like when they came on board with this sort of County Council terms and conditions. And, well, just coming back to your question about risk as well, we did a lot of risk management about when these people came back and the management of the services. That was something that the County Council hasn't done before, operating those household waste recycling centres. So we had to be really joined up in our approach and the comms around that and everything that involved. Another example that was particularly challenging is just being involved in restructures of internal teams, and this can be quite challenging because you can know a lot of the people involved in those. So it was referred to as the Transformation Support Unit, and it's now the Change Team, and what was HR and OD is now formed into People Services. So I was the finance and the accountant responsible for being involved in those two mini projects, which again involved, there were redundancies involved, which is a very sensitive situation to manage, and there was huge MTFS savings attached to both of those. So between the two, it was 1.7 million savings we had to find through that change project, which we did successfully. And it has been a longer process with the People's Services. We didn't quite nail it in the first restructure, so there's sort of been a phase 2 of that that's ongoing at the moment.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Catherine. With your knowledge and experience of the public sector, what do you think are going to be your main challenges in the next, say, 4 to 5 years?
Okay, so I think one of the most important things in this role, and will be one of the challenges, is to first establish those really good working relationships with fire and with police, with the specific individuals in there. So, and I think I'm well set up to do that because I like I said before, I know John Bloomer well and I know David well, so I think a lot of those relationships already exist. I think the challenges will be the uncertainties around the settlements that come to police and fire. Then they never seem to do sort of multi-year settlements, which can make it very difficult to forward plan. I think that funding that they're given is likely to decrease as well. It never seems to go up, it is always going down. So I'm pretty certain that will continue. So it's how we can make the best use of that money is the biggest challenge. I think how can we get the most value for money of the money that we're given, and make the best opportunities from this. And alongside that is obviously sticking to a balanced budget and achieving the MTFS savings that are built into that.
Thank you. Gillian.
Hi Catherine, I'm Councillor Jill Hewson from Newcastle Borough Council. My question's around partnership and agencies. What's your experience of working with partnership and agencies? Thinking of partners who the service work with and contribute to financially.
Okay. So again, through my time as the Senior Strategic Finance Business Partner, I've worked with a variety of partnership agencies. So I-54 was a good one. That was the first sort of joint venture project set up of its kind with City of Wolverhampton Council and also South Staff's District Council as the rate collecting authority there. Because it's in an enterprise zone, the finance model is built on the payback of the spend through the business rates that it generates. So that was not always that straightforward. Working with Wolverhampton, it's sort of two different political organisations, and at times it was quite prickly, maybe. But I think when you have that situation, working with partner agencies where you may not sort of have that smooth working relationship at the start, it's just really key to reinforce the reasons why you're doing it. So that shared objective, like what is the shared goal here? Another example is work with, I was going to say Highways England, I think the National Highways now they're called, on a lot of the strategic road network projects. We work with them a lot of the time. We work with a lot of the third sector, so voluntary organisations and charities, and sort of distributing the members' fund through corporate services as well, and all the districts and boroughs as part of coordinating the leaders board as well. And a lot of the work sort of in families and communities links with a lot of the police around sort of domestic abuse, some of the contracts there. So I've got that experience as well.
Thank you. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chairman. Richard Cox from Lichfield District Council. So what is your experience of consulting with the public and gaining their views and opinions? Where I'm coming from here is the consultation that takes place regarding the police and fire precept setting. So it is effectively around that area, engaging with the public.
Yeah, so as part of the bringing back in-house of the Household Waste Recycling Centres, there was a public consultation as part of that. So my role for that was really sort of making sure that the documents were accurate, sort of up to date with the financial information that was going into those and the impact of the change. And we've also recently gone out around changing the legislation around the ability to charge for trade waste on the sites as well. So being involved in both of those, I would say my role is sort of just making sure that the financial information is there and correct and easy to understand for the public. It's not sort of overcomplicated or anything. So I've got experience of those too. Yeah.
Okay. Colleagues, any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dan Mycock from Tamworth Borough. More questions a little bit on the first question about risk. What experience have you got working with audit teams and implementing their sort of recommendations into your work processes?
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, first role was KPMG in the audit team, so I've got that experience of being part of the people that actually go out and audit and make recommendations around risk. And then in the role as Strategic Finance Business Partner and also Deputy Section 151, I'm the recipient of these audit reports of various areas within my team. So they will always have the recommendation, and it is part of my role to build new processes in response to that to make sure that we've managed that risk and reduced it so it's not there on a future audit report or sort of risk for the future. County Council.
Okay. Councillor Cox.
You don't have to answer this one, but it's gone through my mind. So you did psychology.
Yeah.
You then go into, obviously, accounting and finance. How do you find the psychology into the into that field? Because I'm trying to correlate how's that happened.
I love numbers. I'm really good with numbers, so I always knew I wanted to go into accountancy. But to go into accountancy, you don't need an accountancy degree. So my teachers just said, do something that you find really interesting. And I'll be honest, my psychology degree has helped me so much in all of my roles. It really helps working with people, and it helps you sort of understand maybe where they're coming from. So and I just thought, why not do something a bit different if I'm going to end up doing accountancy for the rest of my life? Yeah.
Councillor Atkins.
Thank you. Do you have any experience of joint procurement with other bodies that you've partnered with to ensure that you get, the best outcome for the local community? For instance, if you're procuring locally, perhaps with another public sector or other organisation, you tend to then have a bigger impact on the economy of the community which you serve. Do you have any experience of that?
I have a little experience, yeah. So we did do joint procurements as part of the I-54 project to share best value with Wolverhampton. In doing that, we were able to get better deals, essentially, from a lot of the suppliers for building the roads on that one. As part of the corporate services, there is quite a lot. So we do some work specifically with Lichfield, I think it is, and Tamworth around the joint procurement. We do some on highways as well, actually. We do a lot on skills, working with sort of some of the education bodies as well and charities, where we sort of offer training programmes. So this is in the skills area in ENIS, where we offer training programmes. We will join up with some of the universities or sort of sixth form colleges or further education colleges, and sort of do the joint procurement that way in terms of getting the materials or some of the just sort of shared locations and things. And I had another one, sorry, but it's gone out of my head now. Yeah.
So are you hoping that you do, you hope that in this new role that you would do something similar in terms of working with partners?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Right, thank you, colleagues. Are there any more questions? No. Right, well, thank you very much for answering those questions. We'll take the opportunity now just to adjourn, deliberate, and we'll be back within 10 minutes, I would hope, noting the time. Thank you. Mrs. Ross, thank you so much for your presentation. We really did enjoy hearing your abilities spelt out in the way that you did. And unanimously, we can confirm your appointment. So congratulations and all the very best to your work with the Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay. I think the meeting is closed at this point. Thank you for all your attendance.